how are we doing? I'm doing great, and today I'm here with my December wrap-up. Towards the start of the month, I was a bit sick and I didn't really read much, so I didn't think I'd actually have the stats I have for you today, but I actually had a great reading month in the second half. So let's delve into the books that I read this month, starting off with the stats, because in December, I read 13 books. I read 4,105 pages, which amounts to 132.41 pages per day and 215.76 pages per book. I finished one series and it's 0 DNFs. And for format, we have 6 books I physically own, 2 ebooks, 2 galleys from NetGalley, and 3 library books. For star rating, I have 3 2 stars, 1 3 star, 7 4 stars, and 2 5 stars, with an average rating of 3.61. For age range, I have 1 middle grade, 3 YA books, and 9 adult books. And then for genre, I have a little bit of everything. I have 2 contemporaries, 5 classics, 4 fantasies, 1 dystopian, and 1 non-fiction. So let's get into the books that I actually read this month, starting off with Joy to the Girls by Rachael Lippincott Alyson Derrick, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to, and is a galley got from NetGalley. I have discovered I'm not really a Christmas book person, but this is a spin-off novella from She Gets to Go by the same authors, which is a book I absolutely adore. So I had to read this, but sadly enough, I wasn't the biggest fan of this. I thought it was fine for the most part. It definitely has the Christmas spirit if you want it. I also really like the side plot with their friends that they're trying to set up, but the actual conflict between the main characters, I really was not a fan of. I thought it was stupid and it was dragged out for so long. I was like, oh my god, just talk to each other. Grow up. Then I read Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, which I give 4 out of 5 stars to. I finally did my Agatha Christie vlog this month, and this is the first one that I read, and I really enjoyed it. It is very much a slow book, which wasn't the greatest for like the headspace I was in, honestly, but I really liked it. Like, not a lot happens in it. It's just like a very slow built mystery, but I think it's just really well written and still very captivating actually to read. And then ultimately, I have seen the movies. I knew who was the culprit, let's say, but even knowing that, I still had a good time reading it. It was a bad review. My vlog is better. Then we have the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, which I give 4 out of 5 stars to. This was a blast. I had so much fun reading this book. It's also very similarly structured as a Criminal Minds episode, and I love Criminal Minds, so I had a good time reading this. In this book, there aren't like a lot of clues that Poirot can follow, so it is very much about trying to get into the psychology of the killer, is also a serial killer, so hence the Criminal Minds vibes. And I don't know, I thought that was so interesting and such a different way for like a mystery book to solve a mystery, so I really liked that. I also thought the cast of characters was fun. In this book, we actually follow the perspective of Hastings, which is the only Agatha Christie book that I read that does that, even though there's a lot of them, but I really like being in his POV, and I really liked his dynamic with Poirot. In this book, it also showcases that Poirot is just a little shit, and I love him for it. I laughed at this book so much just because of Poirot basically, but also like his dynamic with Hastings, so I really enjoyed that. I did think the reveal came a little bit out of nowhere, and I wanted a bit more towards that, but ultimately I thought this was such a fun book. Then next I read Swordheart by Kingfisher, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to, and this was a disappointment because I heard so many great things about this book over the years, and I was very excited to read it, but I thought it was a bore. I thought it was so boring, like almost nothing happens in this book, and oh my god, I was bored. And then when you get to like the third conflict, that basically makes the whole journey we just went on obsolete, and I was already boring enough, and then they get out of that conflict so easily. It's like, okay, so if the character through the conflict is back in the spot she was at the start of the book, and then we get out of it so easily, why did we need to do this whole book? Because like, what are we doing really? And then on top of that, I also just think the characters and the romance, because it is a romantic book, was just extremely underdeveloped, and I did not care about it, so I did not have a good time with this. I didn't hate it because I do think it is genuinely really funny, and therefore it got some points for me because I genuinely laughed throughout this entire book. Then next I read That on the Nile by Agatha Christie, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to. And if we're talking about boring books, this is another one of them. Nothing happens in this book. The murder doesn't even happen until like halfway through the book. The characters are so indistinguishable from each other, which also doesn't really make it a fun read. And again, I watched this movie, so I at first didn't know, but as soon as things started unfolding, I was like, oh wait, I do remember who the actual culprit is. But saying that, I knew it, I still didn't see it. I feel like there weren't any like hints leading in that direction or anything, so that was also disappointing. And I don't know, the racism in it is also wild. It's set in Egypt, and the amount of times we just go on little side tangents just to talk shit about people of color, No. Then next, I read Something Wicked by Falon Ballard, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to, and is a gal I got from Nangali. I really enjoyed Falon Ballard's books before. This is her first romantasy book, so I picked it up because of that, not necessarily because of the synopsis, because it sounded really out of my comfort zone. It sounded more like sex focused than I typically like. But as you can tell by the rating, I really enjoyed this book, and that really was a surprise to me, especially because the romance was easily my favorite part of this book. It had me blushing. It was very hot. Like I said, not my typical cup of tea, but I really like it, and also just like how it isn't just physical. Actually, there is a lot of emotional depth to them as well, and I don't know, I really liked how that was developed and written. I also just liked the world. I thought it was really interesting. I also really liked the magic system in this. I thought it was really interesting. The only thing I wasn't the biggest fan of was actually the characters, weirdly enough. I feel like I've never really liked the romance, but I didn't really like the characters. I liked them in theory, but I do think they were a bit stupid. And the amount of times we did the same conflict over and over and over again was just a bit annoying. So there you go. Then next, I read The Court of the Dead by Mark Oshiro and Rick Riordan, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. I also read this in a reading vlog. This one was another reading my library books before they do video, so go check that out. But I really enjoyed this. At this point, I'm so deep in the Percy Jackson world that anything I like. Like this just, every book just feels like coming home to me, and this is no exception. It just felt like a warm hug, and on top of that, I think we do a great job dealing with also a bit more difficult topics. Like this is a lot about finding a place of belonging, but also dealing with the more difficult emotions in your arsenal. And I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the way it was executed, especially considering this is towards a middle grade audience. I feel like it tackled a lot of important topics really well. And on top of that, I also just think the storyline with the mythology is just really fun, and I really like how that was done. And I always love being at Camp Jupiter, and I feel like this is the first time I've been at Camp Jupiter when it isn't at peril, so that was also fun, you know. Then I also read Catching Fire, the illustrated edition by Suzanne Collins and illustrated by Nico Delort, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to, and of course this was a reread. I reread The Hunger Games through the illustrated edition last month, so of course I had to get to Catching Fire this month, and I love it. I mean I love it. It's a 4-star. I feel like something about Catching Fire just doesn't hit the same way that Mockingjay and The Hunger Games do. I can't explain it. I just think like the tension is kind of missing from it. But I do think this is such an interesting book, especially upon reread. There's so much I picked up on that I didn't before, and obviously partially because of things we know through the other books, but also just smaller things that I didn't notice in my first read of it. On top of that, of course, the illustrations are gorgeous and a great addition to the story, just like with The Hunger Games. And I don't know, I really like my experience rereading this book. Then next, I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to. I was not expecting the Agatha Christie reading vlog to end up with a 5-star, but here we are. This book, I have heard great things about. I think this is like the most well-loved Agatha Christie book, at least that I've seen. And I at first was like, okay, how good can it be? This got like, it's so hard for me to give a mystery thriller 5 stars. I feel like the ones that I can count on like one, like the ones that I did I can count on like one hand, because that's how little there are. So for this to be a 5-star for me, you know, it's some good shit. I really liked it. It was so well written. It has a very classic mystery setup, but what it does with it is so good. I really like the cast of characters. I thought they were fun. I love Poirot in this book. Again, a little shit, love him. There was a lot of moving parts to this book, which means that we got some smaller reveals as well, some that I saw coming, some that shocked me, but ultimately the drama of the final reveal was so good. And it's something that does not make sense yet makes all sense, and it broke my brain, and I'm still thinking about it. And I generally would highly recommend this to everyone, because it is just such a masterclass at writing mysteries, if that makes sense. And then I also read Hickory Dickory Dock by Agatha Christie, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to. This is the final book that I read for that reading vlog. Racist. So racist. Even more racist than Death on the Nile, which I didn't think was possible. But we actually have quite a like diverse cast of characters. There's a lot of people of color in here, but they all were stereotypes, the most stereotypical ones that you could think of. And honestly, it was really bad. And on top of that, there's even like, there are some characters that are established to be racist, but there's also characters that are like, how dare that person be racist? I'm not racist, and then say just some very vile racist shit afterwards. So just for that, this book is trash. But even besides that, I just don't think it is a well-written mystery. I feel like this is like, with Death on the Nile, I thought it was boring as fuck, but like technically it is decently written. What is it? I think it's like, there's barely any clues or something to correspond to for the mystery. Poirot was even barely in this book, so what are we doing? And then the reveal just felt so anticlimactic. It was just like, what are we doing? I don't know. And then the next book that I read is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This is a sequel to Better Than the Movies, which I read earlier this year and really loved. Surprisingly so, I did not see it coming. So I first was hesitant to pick up the sequel because it's always when you read contemporary romance, this YA, with the same couple, like a sequel doesn't always work for me because you gotta split them up and it's always for a stupid reason, and I don't know. But I just picked this up because I love these characters so much and I wanted more of them, and I'm so glad I did because I think I actually might like this more than the first book. I really enjoyed this one. I think it is a great story of grief, and I already thought Better Than the Movies was a great story of grief, but this one focuses more on Wes, and his relationship with his parents that passed away is much more difficult than it was with Liz's mom. So it becomes a very complex narrative surrounding that, and I thought that was just really well done, and I cried, man. I did. And then on top of that, it is just a second chance romance, and it's done well. Like, I love a second chance romance if it's done well, because I think that they are really hard to pull off, and I think this one does so well. I feel like the reason for their breakup makes sense, yet they can still come back from it, and I really like how that was done. Also, Wes is pining in this book, this yearning. Yes, please. It's not perfect because I do think the conflict was a bit dragged out towards the ending, and it got a bit annoying because, like, we're just doing conflict for conflict's sake at this point. But for the rest, I generally would really recommend this one. And then I read The Third Girlmore Girl by Kelly Bishop, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to. I always find it hard to rate and review nonfiction, especially memoirs, but this was such an easy 5-star for me, no doubt in my mind, because this was phenomenal. I did not want to put this book down. It was just so well written and just so compellingly written. And then I also just think Kelly Bishop is a badass. And I got, like, I did not know this much about her at all. The only thing I knew was that she plays Emily in Gilmore Girls, and I've seen Gilmore Girls, so I know that. But she has led such an interesting life. Then lastly, for December and 2025, is The Poppy War by Kuang, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to, and this was another reread. I read this one like at the very start of 2024, so it's been a while. And I've been meaning to continue with the series, never got around to it, and it is my goal to finish this series in 2026, but I really needed a reread of this book because I felt like I didn't remember enough from it. I do have to say, while reading this, a lot came back, and I do feel like if I picked up the sequel, enough would have come back for me to be able to follow. But I'm so glad I reread this because there are so many like tiny but yet important details that I just completely forgot about, and I'm glad they're back in my mind because I'm sure that will make my reading experience of the sequel so much better. But this is a great book. I really like it. I just think it's so well crafted, especially the world and the plot. It's just insanely well done. Sadly enough, when it comes to characters, this one is a bit lacking to me. I feel like that's a very common critique of Kuang, one that I haven't agreed with the other books that I've read by her, but with this one I have to confer because it just, I don't know, I feel like I don't even know that much about our main character, let alone like any of the side characters. I don't have to say I know enough about them so that they're distinguishable, but it's a feat in and of itself because there is quite a lot of characters in this book. But I feel like I know the bare minimum, and I would like a bit more development, especially when it comes to different character relationships as well. And yeah, that is everything that I read in the month of December. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of any of these books if you've read them. So some of the books you read this month, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye.